All right. Kevin Lankford. I'm 42 years old, live in Huntsville, Texas. Work for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Um, Currently, I'm an assistant regional director for Region 1. And I spend most of my time finishing school. Got two kids that keep me fairly busy, and of course, work, which takes up a large portion of my time.
Are you taking classes there at Sam Houston or
Taking online classes. It's one of those 20-year plan bachelor degrees. I'm pretty close to being finished.
Yeah, you know what? Hey, it is what it is. Better late than never. I didn't graduate till I was 37, and here I am at 41, back in the thick of it. Uh, so don't, yeah, just keep on trucking, man.
It's tough at times, but it'll be worth it.
Right. Absolutely. So, assistant regional director, you've made a few advancements since we worked together.
I have. So I started with the TDCJ in July of '98 and went through training academy in Beeville, Texas, and graduated there and came to the East Ham unit. I worked in administrative segregation, which we now call restrictive housing, for roughly almost 4.5 years of that. I spent the last few months working in general population. Then I promoted to sergeant in 2002 at the Lewis unit. And then a few years later, it's like 2005, if I recall, might have been the end of 2004, I lateraled up to the Skyview Hodge unit in Rusk. And at the Skyview Hodge unit was an operational review sergeant. So basically just auditing various divisions and departments within the facility based on a checklist that those functional area proponents provided. And basically, you're just checking to see, are we doing what we say we're doing? It's a check and balance process. And then in 2008, I promoted to lieutenant at Skyview Hodge. And then about a little less than a year later, I lateraled over to the Polunsky unit. All this time I had been living in Lufkin, so all of these things were within an hour drive, basically. I left the state in December of 2010 and came back in February of 2012 to the Lewis unit and actually rehired as a CO and promoted to sergeant really kind of funny how that happened. I'd interviewed for a sergeant's position at Lewis from the free world, meaning not employed by TDCJ, and wasn't selected initially. But when I rehired as a correctional officer, they were going to send me to the Estelle unit. So on paper, I was assigned to Estelle unit for about 8 days. But on the day of rehire, the Lewis unit called and offered a sergeant's position, which I accepted. And then there was this new thing that I had never been through called the Sergeant's Academy, and it didn't exist in 2002, and I successfully avoided it basically. A little apprehensive of it, but went and it had a good time. It was a good program. But at the end of the Sergeant's Academy, which at that time was 2 weeks, I interviewed for lieutenant and promoted to lieutenant. Like maybe 2 weeks after the Sergeant's Academy ended. So I went from off the street back to lieutenant pretty rapidly. Some things had changed within the agency, so it was a little bit of an adjustment period, but caught in there. And in July of 2013, I promoted to captain at the Lewis unit. And in October of 2015, I lateraled over to the Ellis unit here in Huntsville. Uh, it was a good move. Ellis unit had some very interesting things going on with the grad program involving STG and some various things that I'd never seen before. But I really just kind of wanted to get back into the Huntsville area because with any job, it's not so much about performance as it is how familiar people are with you. So your chances of advancement are better when you're exposed to a larger group of people. In Region 1, the concentration of units are here in Huntsville. I think it was like October of eight. No, it was September. I know exactly. It was September. September of 18. It was the very end of August. They approached me and asked would I like to go to training department actually at the time. And immediately I dismissed them because I had a good shift and I was like, no, I'm good here. I'm happy at the Ellis unit on shift. Got good people, got a good thing going, I think, and I think the statistics would show that we had the best shift. But the position was in leadership development, which was the captains that taught the Sergeant's Academy, lieutenants, the captain's class, and various other leadership classes. So after about an hour or something like that, there was a little delay, and then they asked again, said, "Hey, this is your last opportunity. We're going to go with another person." And I had time to think about it. I said, you know what? I've done everything I can do as a captain. I'd been a captain nearly 5 years, really actually a little over 5 years maybe at that point. And I thought, this might be an opportunity to learn some new things and get exposed to different people, learn more about the agency. So I took that position, uh, spent about a year and 2 months, a year and a month, something like that, in leadership development. I had a really good time there. It was very interesting. As October of 2019, I promoted to assistant regional director in Region 1, which is where I currently am. So, all that having been said, the agency's been good to me. It's been a good job. I left for like 14 months to pursue some law enforcement, and it worked out, but it didn't work out. Training wasn't bad at all. But this was in the time that we were having some serious budget cuts across the state because I guess revenue for the state was down and they laid off a bunch of constables in Harris County. So the job that I had lined up, basically had a conditional job offer for, disappeared almost overnight. So I was left with, what am I going to do? Law enforcement in and of itself does not really pay that great unless you're in a metro area. So you can either live in the Houston area and find a job that pays good, work your way up, or you can move out somewhere more rural. Well, at the time, there weren't very many jobs unless you were going to willing to work in the county somewhere outside of the major areas. Looking at their salaries, I realized I made more money working for the prisons. I had good benefits. I had good retirement. I knew the job. It was a good thing. So I decided to come back, and I plan to retire, and hopefully I make it that far. Retirement is definitely the goal.
Fairly close.
Yeah, it's not too far off, honestly. So, you know, the retirement thing, everybody says one thing until they get close to that date. And then it's like, well, what am I going to do? Because the way our state retirements are calculated, uh, you know, you want to spend as much time in that highest pay that you can. So, of course, if I were to get a promotion, to a substantial promotion at least, or an increase in pay within that 3 year range there at the end, may stay a little longer. Just depends on the climate at the time, and that's really hard to see and forecast that far down the road because things are so volatile, really, in state government and criminal justice as a whole now, and I don't see that really changing much in the future. So,
Right. So you started out as a baseline officer, um, and you were dealing hands-on with the inmate population. You were running and gunning back in what I know is ad seg, but you called it what now?
they call it restrictive housing now. It's just a change in terminology, really.
Um, and then you progressively promoted up the chain, and you ended up, in doing so, you wound up in as a operational review sergeant, which is basically like a unit auditor, right? Like you're going through, making sure things are okay. You're prepping for the audit, making sure things are the way they are or are supposed to be, right?
That, that's correct.
Okay. So you had a little hint of administrative duties at that point in that aspect. And then you got away from the state, or, promoted to lieutenant, got away from the state, came back, promoted back through the ranks, was a captain on a unit level. And then now you're off unit or you got into training. And then now you're from the training, you went into the regional director or assistant regional director, right?
That's it. I spent 20 years inside the prison every day. That last year, a captain was in training, so you know it's a different environment. And then this past year, uh, the 15th of last month was actually the 1 year anniversary. So it'll be what, 13 months now today, working in the regional office. So I've gotten to see, very fortunate. I've been pretty blessed. The operational review position kind of opens your eyes to the background things that you don't see running in the penitentiary as a correctional officer, even a sergeant or a lieutenant, sometimes even captains. They don't get to see some of those things or understand the inner workings of how much it really takes to run an entire prison system.
No, I completely agree with that. So my journey through the state was it has some parallels to yours, as though like I worked as a officer, a sergeant, lieutenant, made captain. I got away from the state. I ended up coming back to the state, worked as an officer again, a sergeant, lieutenant, and then the exodus occurred. But so I never was a operational review sergeant. I never worked in the training department, and never made it to one of the off unit jobs. But I did participate in lots of audits, lots of, I would go to other units and help audit. I was a auditor on a staffing team that went all throughout the region 3 at the time, and looked at the staffing plans for each unit. And I got involved in a lot of the administrative stuff, as you do as a unit captain. You get involved in a lot of the administrative stuff. Um, the
If you're good
thing,
at being a captain,
What's that?
if you're good at being a captain.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Um, so, but there's a lot of stuff that you pick up along the way that really makes what you were doing way back when you were an officer on the block or working chow hall or delivering the mail make more sense as you promote up and you gain all this perspective. How do you make sure that the baseline officers on a unit level can benefit from some of that perspective without actually going through that, those chain of events that you or other administrators have gone through, how do you make sure that benefits them?
So when you and I started in the workforce, and even previous to us, you were given a task to do by your supervisor and you just did it. There was no questions, there was no discussion. You just did what you were told. Um, we're finding now that through culture changes, and I think a lot of that's been affected by technology and just how we as our generation have raised our kids. We're finding out that uh, the younger workforce wants to know why things are. So if you tell them to go do something, then they'll do it. Most of them will just go do it, right? But in the back of their mind, they still have that lingering question: why am I doing this? So Simon Sinek, he's got a lot of TED talks. He's wrote some books, and there's a pretty cool TED talk he's got that deals with his book. Start with why, and basically he goes over how the human brain is designed to always be thinking about the why of things. So I found that if you can explain more of a process, if you can explain the reasons why things are done to staff, then not only will they understand why they're doing it, they kind of might start taking some ownership in it and be more committed and involved in it. So definitely, you want to give them the big picture. There's absolutely no reason to not explain the inner workings of things, unless it's like something security sensitive, which does happen, but it's not as often as we'd think. Giving them the bigger picture and more access to the information that we didn't have helps to kind of round out the task. So um, I've always tried to approach it from that perspective, even before I knew what that perspective really was, because I often questioned, why are we doing this? Some of it may be that just a innate questioning authority thing that some of us do have, but it really just, if your mind's working and you're thinking, why am I doing this? And also you might be thinking, how can I more efficiently do this? And just getting a better understanding of the big picture. So I think that you definitely want to educate folks. You want to teach them what you know, because in the past, I don't want to teach you what I know because then you're going to replace me. Well, that was the mentality, but now we're realizing that we need to create a leadership pipeline. If we're going to develop our staff to replace us, which is inevitable, then we got to start investing in them now. So as a lieutenant, you can become frustrated as a lieutenant with the quality of the sergeants assigned to your shift because you don't really have any control over that. So my goal as a lieutenant was, hey, uh, I have a few guys that could do better, so invest in them. But also, what COs do I have that I could, correctional officers do I have that I could probably invest the same amount of energy and time in to develop them, so that when they promote to sergeant, they're better equipped, and when they start that position, they know how to do it. So they hit the ground running. So as a lieutenant, uh, that was always something that I wanted to do, because also, the administration may come and say, hey, we have a sergeant's board coming up. What COs do you have ready? So it's always good to be able to give them some names of some people that you're willing to put your put your name on them, so that you're saying that, hey, this is a person I back. I never once gave a name to an administrator of somebody that I thought was ready for promotion that I didn't fully expect them to assign to working for me. So, you know, um, what we used to call selling a hog, I never wanted to do that, because I didn't want to put somebody else in a position that somebody was promoted beyond their ability. That whole Peter principle, right? Uh, we tend to promote people sometimes one step beyond their ability. I don't want to put somebody in that position to fail. So uh, it's been a struggle
So
sometimes, because
when you
because
when you're talking about that, you're saying, you want to make sure people are in the appropriate positions for their abilities, and that you maximize those abilities, and oftentimes that means they excel at the job that they have, the job at hand. And it's very hard to not promote the people who are excelling at the job that they're doing. So what qualities do you look for when you're pushing somebody for that next promotion? You know, because there's going to be situations where somebody's a great lieutenant, but there's something about their character or something about their performance or their skill set that might not translate all that well into that next captain spot, which can, as we mentioned, be more administrative at times. What But the same could be said about a sergeant's position. The same could be said about an officer's position. I think we've all seen great baseline officers or great baseline employees in general get promoted up into a supervisory role and not excel at all. When you're either picking an applicant to put in these positions or you're pushing for an applicant to get one of these positions, what are some things that you look for to ensure that they would be good in that?
So, the agency's core values: courage, commitment, integrity, and perseverance. When I was looking at this, I came back to that, and I really, honestly, I promise you, I'm not the kind of person that just parrots cliches or things of that nature. But when you look at a person, the first thing that you want to do is be able to trust that person. So they have to be honest. They have to have integrity. A person that can't be trusted is not somebody that people are going to be willing to follow. They're not going to see him as a leader. So that's definitely going to be the highest, I think, on the list. They need to be professional. There's a time that we all cut up. There's a time that we have fun. And if you can't cut up and have fun at work, it sure makes for a long, boring, miserable 8 hours, 12 hours, whatever you're doing, whatever hours you're working. So understanding the difference between and when the timing, being professional, and just having fun. You can do both. You can be professional and you can have fun. So uh, thinking back to all those years ago back at Eastham, yeah, might have done some things that if people looked at them, especially in today's light, they would be thinking, "Oh, that's horrible," right? So, well, we always joke that some of the things that happened in the past we would get fired for now, which is entirely true.
I was about to
But
say that's not a joke.
yes, yeah, it's definitely true because things are different now. But being able to see when and where something is appropriate, and being able to socialize and work in those areas, depending on your audience, is definitely being able to distinguish when it's appropriate to say and act and do things. Um, Another thing would be courage, and courage doesn't mean the guy that's really willing to step in and just take the bullet, or be the first person out of the gate to jump into a conflict. Courage is a lot of things, right? So you're looking for individual courage, but I'm also looking for somebody with professional courage. Um,
Now, that's a
if you
very
see,
good point. It takes, when you hear the term courage, most people think of, the guy or the gal who's willing to jump out there and put themselves in harm's way. But it's it has several layers. It takes a lot of courage to stand up to an administrator. It
yep,
takes a lot of courage to speak up against a coworker. It takes a lot of courage just to tell somebody to stop sometimes. There's many different versions of courage, and all of them are admirable, and it's good to recognize that.
so in that line of professional courage, um, sometimes people can take that and misconstrue what we're saying. There's always that individual that seems to want to go out of the way to be different or stand out. and they see themselves as being the person that spoke out when nobody else would. But I'm really trying to describe that one. There's always that person. If you work on a shift, there's always the person that they would call the RoboCop or something that I'm not saying that that's professional courage. Professional courage is being able to tell your supervisor, hey, I don't think this is a good idea, and this is why. And if they're a good supervisor, they're going to listen. Now, it's not disrespectful until the decision's been made. So once the decision's been made, of course, we got to follow. But prior to that, you definitely have to speak up and voice your opinion, because you don't, as a supervisor, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room necessarily. But also, if you don't listen to your staff, then you're wasting a valuable resource, because they're going to have a different perspective. They're going to have possibly different facts. Uh, they're going to be able to provide you with the bigger pieces so that you make a good informed decision.